Coming up on show 752, the Rivero GTE is their first fully electric vehicle. If you stick around, I'll tell you more. Plus Tesla's Q1 report, when we can expect it. An electric car startup that looks like they are up against it. Nissan licensing their battery tech, a new plug-in hybrid from BMW, and an all-electric van for Australia coming from China. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, the edition for Saturday, the 18th of April. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. Thank you as always to myev.com for helping me make this show. Couldn't do it without them, and it's been almost a couple of years now that I've been honoured to say thank you very much to MyEV. At least if you're in the US, you can check out MyEV. It is a dedicated marketplace all about finding out about how people buy and sell, research, finance, warranty, electric cars. Only cars with plug sockets on. If you're just doing some window shopping as well, or you want to see the most popular EVs for sale in your price bracket, check out myev.com. Well, a quick public service announcement for those interested. Tesla is going to be posting their first quarter financial results after the market closes on Wednesday, April 29th. Tesla executives will hold their live Q&A webcast at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. It's always a late night for me, just before midnight, to listen to that call and try and make sense of what happens on it. Analysts polled by FactSet are currently expecting a adjusted loss of 25 cents a share on sales of $6.2 billion in the quarter. Of course, all car makers have faced stoppages because of COVID-19. Tesla's board of directors learned late on Thursday Gigafactory in Sparks, Nevada is scheduled to reopen on May the 4th. This will also include a raft of new safety measures like staff having access to masks, social distancing, PPE vending machines, gloves, temperature screening. Anyone over 100.4 degrees is going to be sent home. Extra cleaning of door handles and push bars. Hourly cleaning of entrances, sanitizer and wipes provided. Transport shuttles being capped at 30% of their normal capacity. And workstation partitions and IT help desks being partitioned, conference rooms being closed, all of those things to ensure the safety of the staff and ensure that production can get up and underway once again. I do hope you are doing okay, whatever you're doing, wherever you're listening, whatever the situation is in your part of the world. I hope you're safe and well, and your loved ones are doing okay as well. Let's get into the news. The Rivero lineup is expanding as the company has released the first details about the Rivero GTE. According to Car Scoop, set to become the company's first fully electric vehicle, the Rivero GTE is based on their own platform that we heard about recently that they would be making available to other EV makers. And of course, if they had their own platform, you'd put your own cars on it, wouldn't you? It's going to be launched in the spring of next year, so we're about a year away from the GTE. A bit coy on specifics, but we know about two versions. The first one is going to have a 75 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery pack. They're aiming for 200 miles of range on that, 322 kilometres. If you want, they're going to do a bigger one, which is 100 kilowatt-hours for 300 miles of range and 483 kilometres. DC fast charging of 150 kilowatts, wasn't it? Yeah. And a sub 4 seconds 0 to 60, which really, how fast do you want to drive on public roads? It will be made available to China and Europe sometime in 2021, but later in the year. So if you're excited about having a look at what the Rivero will bring, not too long to wait. I like the styling of the Rivero, the design house. They just make really beautiful looking cars, and so maybe if any of the current EVs aren't tickling your fancy, go and have a look at the Rivero GTE and see if the styling of that is something up your street. Of course, they have been more well known as range extended cars until now. Here's a startup manufacturer that looks like they are going through a tough time. The Swedish electric car Unity 1 is due to come into production this summer. And I have a soft spot for this car for the most silly of reasons. I remember when I first launched this podcast a couple of years ago now, I was talking about the Unity one on show number 2. The second podcast I ever made was about the Unity one. So, for a very silly reason, nostalgic reasons, I'd love to see this car get to production, but will it? Well, we really hope so, but the company has been in financial trouble, and Unity has been granted corporate restructuring by the Lund District Court, says an article that I found in Swedish and that I've translated from mestmotor.se. Well, Unity initially started off as a spin-off project from Lund University 4 years ago. Initially, the car was going to be manufactured in the area and provide 1,000 jobs in, I think it's called Skåne. Later, the company decided to move to England, and where the home of sort of motorsport valley in this country, Silverstone, where the Formula 1 is, they were going to be making the car there. The latest bit was that they started receiving orders and that production would then start, but now in China and in summer 2020. Well, I've had a look today on the UK website. It's still operating. You can still configure a car. You can still register your interest. Couldn't find anywhere that they would take money from me. I know that plenty of people have given the company money, and from what I gather, that money is ring-fenced if for any reason the company doesn't work out. I gather they are doing things the right way. The range for the Unity 1, well, it was a little 2 or 3-seater. When I say a 3-seater, what I mean is 1 seat up front, and the driver in a central position, and then 2 seats behind. Shorter than something like a little iGo, for instance. The battery on it was 12 kilowatt hours, and yes, that's tiny, but it would get you 150 kilometers of range because, well, the car is so small and lightweight. There was also a bigger battery as well. You could knock yourself out with a 24 kilowatt hour pack that would do 300 kilometers on the WLTP test cycle. As of December 2018, 29th of December 2018, they concluded a funding round on Crowdcube from 2,000 odd investors of £1.1 million. Well, I also found an article in Swedish today when I was researching this story. On the 8th of April, the website digital.di.se said that so far the application hadn't been granted by the district courts. Maybe that information needs to be updated. If the restructuring was approved, though, and by the looks of it, part of it has been approved, it means the company can get help with state salary support and negotiating debts while the business gets protected from bankruptcy. But the process requires the company, which has 8 employees in Sweden, to change the way they do business. The CEO is someone called Lewis Horn. I've checked out the latest social posts. There was one from a while ago on the 7th of April. This was a video that he did to camera that addressed the delays caused by coronavirus and not this financing issue. We really, really hope that this is just something that they have to go through to get the car on the road. And I bring you that story, firstly, like I say, I really want them to succeed, and anything that has gone through crowdfunding and hit their they exceeded their targets. Anything like that, you always want to see come off for the people that backed it as well. But also, just for anyone kind of new to the podcast or with a passing interest in this area, as a lesson in that it's really, really, really hard to bring a car to market. It's fiendishly difficult to put a car on the road and pass crash tests and do it in a way that is attractive enough for people to part with their own hard-earned money. So if I'm going to carry on looking at this story. I've spent more time today than I probably should have done actually at the weekend. But I just went down a bit of a wormhole of just trying to find out more details. Not a huge amount online at the moment. I sort of backed off from directly messaging the CEO for a statement. I'm sure that there's COVID-19 things that they're trying to sort out with supply chains and don't need an idiot on a podcast harassing them about stories like this. But we really wish them the best. And if it doesn't work out for Unity, it'd be a very sad story and an illustration that it's not easy to do this. Well, a company that's the other end of the scale, been making EVs for the longest of times. Japanese car maker Nissan has licensed their battery technology to APB Corporation. And this is a company that wants to make and mass produce low-cost lithium-ion batteries with increased charging capacity, says Autocar Pro, for home storage. The Tokyo-based APB is backed by the investment from some major companies and plans to build a factory in Japan that will use Nissan's battery technology. This technology isn't necessarily what you would find in cars, but its all-polymer batteries are best used for home storage. Well, Nissan says the all-polymer batteries are the next generation of lithium-ion batteries. The car maker has some technology that they've been working on known as bipolar structure. It helps consumers and communities very cost-effectively have home storage. And like I say, I'm gathering, looking into this story, that it doesn't necessarily give you the right qualities that you need for a battery operating in an EV, but actually for your home that uses a lot less power, or peak power when you need it, could be a way to mass produce home storage at a more sensible cost than you can get at the moment. It enhances safety by replacing the liquid electrolytes with polymers, and the simplified structure is what leads to the lower cost. I'll pop a link in the show notes to that story. A review out today of the new BMW X5 plug-in hybrid, and maybe a plug-in is the car for you. Well, BMW has one of the broadest ranges of plug-in hybrids available for any manufacturer, with their expertise clearly knowing how to make an EV working in their advantage. It's true of the new plug-in hybrid version of the very big, rather large X5 SUV, writes the website Car Keys in their on-road review. The petrol engine has gone from a 2-litre to a 3-litre, and the battery size has also increased, though. It's increased from 9.2 kilowatt hours, which frankly for a big SUV on the old model, 9.2 was never going to cut it. But get this, BMW on their new X5 plug-in are putting in a 24 kilowatt hour battery. That's bigger than the battery that I had on my first ever EV. So 24 kilowatt hours on the new X5, which I've joked about this before. Regular listeners will know I'm bemused at the BMW naming structure. They have called it the BMW X5 xDrive 45E. Just call it the X5 plug-in. Anyway, one of the most impressive electric ranges of a plug-in hybrid. They claim 54 miles, but look, if you're exceeding even 40 in real-world driving, in cold temperatures, I mean, look, you're doing well, but a 24 kilowatt hour battery on a big SUV should get you 40 to 50 real world. You'll be doing all right on that. You can find yourself doing loads of journeys on electric only. Now, usual health warning. If all of your journeys are motorways at 70 miles an hour, don't buy a plug-in hybrid. They're very good for many things, but if you spend thousands and thousands of miles a week or a month because that's your job or whatever, just pounding away on motorway miles, don't buy a plug-in hybrid, because you're just carrying a lot of batteries around and it'll do very little good. But if you are doing those kind of mixed journeys where you can charge overnight and 40 or 50 miles a day is all, I mean, look, that's way more than the average, by the way, in many countries, then the daily average commute and daily average of driving. You'll be doing that on electricity, and if you're charging overnight, maybe on a cheap rate, that big 3-litre gas engine, the big 3-litre petrol in the X5 is never going to be turning over. I'm sure it probably does turn itself over. Most of these plug-in hybrids have some sort of thing where if the engine hasn't been run for a while, it goes through sort of a maintenance cycle. So, if you like that car, let me know. If you don't like that car, let me know in the comments or email. I always like to hear what you think of the stories that we talk about on the podcast. Vans are something that just aren't sexy, but also minibuses, just not sexy. But you know what? It's a really, really important part of the EV story, because these are working vehicles. Your car right now, unless you're listening to this podcast driving somewhere, is probably parked. I've seen various stats over the years, but they're always in the 90-something% of your car's life is spent parked, which is mad when you think about it. The money we spend on our cars, that some of them are like 90 or 98% of its life is spent parked. But these kind of vehicles, working vehicles, they have to earn their keep, and that means they're doing lots of miles, and that means that for every mile they drive, of many more than typical domestic cars, they are not doing as much damage. A Chinese-made all-electric commercial van is going to begin testing on Australian roads this year, and details and specs of the vehicle have been shared with the blog The Driven by a newcomer to the EV market. They're called EV Automotive, and fully configurable with seating options for up to 14 passengers. It's called the EC11. It's a large electric van, and it's one of several all-electric vehicles pegged for potential release in Australia by EV Automotive. They are built and owned by a state-owned Chinese automaker, which is called Dongfeng. Dongfeng are going to be making the new EC11. What's the stats, you're asking? All right, I'll tell you. Powered by a 72 kilowatt-hour battery, nice and big, the all-electric EC11 light commercial van will fast charge on DC fast charging, CCS combo plug, at a 60 kilowatt charge rate. That's okay. That's all right. Fully loaded, the EC11 will do about 220 kilometres of driving, according to the brochure that's been put out by Dongfeng. So, what do you think about those kind of vehicles? Yeah, important, right? I mean, not the sexiest, never going to get the front page of magazines, are they? But, airport transfers, working vehicles, minibuses, shuttles, even the in-van configuration, really, really, really important. Right, a couple more stories, and we start to move on to what the world will be like post-COVID-19. First of all, where the batteries are coming from and why it's important that China gets back to being good at what they're good at. And that is making parts for the battery supply chain. Nickel, cobalt, manganese, cathodes chemistries dominate lithium-ion EV battery productions. If you hear us talking about NCM batteries, it's because the cathode on them is nickel, cobalt, manganese. Tesla is doing their best to change that, though, says the website mining.com. EVs only account really for about 7% of all nickel consumption in the world. So if you're thinking, going to run out of nickel, no. EV batteries taking less than 7% of that. 35% of chemical processing is happening outside of China, which is about as unlopsided, that's not a word, as we get in terms of EV batteries, because apart from that, China's pretty much in control. A new report by Benchmark Mineral Intelligence shows just what a stranglehold China has on the EV battery supply chain. Well, Benchmark says that while China only mines 6% of the world's manganese, for example, it is this chemical refining in the supply chain where China has the advantage. Last year, 93% of all production went through China, of that essential part of the batteries. As Benchmark has advised, you haven't actually got to own the raw materials to own control of the supply chain. Something to bear in mind when you hear, certainly, I know all politicians say different things at different times, but if I'm taking the temperature of the room, certainly here, our politicians of this week, I wouldn't say turned on China, but the rhetoric is very different to recent in terms of where the virus came from. I mean, we're not Trump levels of calling it the Chinese virus, but things have changed, and so it's a delicate relationship with China in terms of EV batteries. Let's talk final couple of stories about the situation we're in, how coronavirus will supercharge the EV market. Got some opinions coming in from Fleet News website. Someone called Charlie Grimston is the co-founder of Ultelium, and he's a CEO as well. And they've interviewed him, and he's given us some thoughts from his perspective on why the EV market will be supercharged by the current situation. I've picked out a few of them. Firstly, he reckons that clean refuelling are going to play on people's minds. I thought about this today. I went to get some supplies. We're shopping about twice a week at the moment. How about you? What are you doing? You getting home deliveries? You going out? I mean, we've got the little one, and so we became a family last year, and my wife's a nurse as well, and so having her maternity year off, she's taking a year. We're waiting and hoping we don't get the phone call from people saying, can you come back to work? And calling certainly all of her friends that either recently retired or had moved on to different things. People have been getting the call saying, can you come back? And the health service needs you. And so we've had that conversation. If the phone rings, what do we say? She has asthma. She's at a high risk category. We have a small person in the house now. And so we think a lot about how often we go out and who we expose ourselves, the risks that we expose ourselves to. But I went to get some supplies today, and we use a co-op. We like to shop at the co-op. It's attached to a petrol station. And only today I was looking at the petrol pumps thinking, I just don't fancy touching a petrol pump at them. I mean, we don't anyway, but I was looking at it thinking, man, that is, no one's out there cleaning them between every use. And in this interview with Charlie, he says that actually petrol pumps will play on people's minds. Drivers will want electric cars because as they're filling up their diesel and petrol cars over this period, they'll be wondering, who touched this before I did? The other thing he points out is the environmental gains. People will want to do things differently and better in terms of the environment. People who can afford to buy cars which will play a part in making the world better and greener. Those who have seen how nature is already recovering and can afford to buy an EV will do. People who want to buy once but buy well. And in those situations, fleet buyers come in. Those investing in cars, especially fleet owners, will want to buy the next car or the next lease car they get. They'll want to make sure they buy it well. And this global lockdown, stay at home, is nothing like we've ever experienced. But many of us have experienced recessions in the past. And when that happens, people's buying decisions get scrutinised a lot. And actually, if you can buy a car that is reliable, low maintenance, isn't going to go wrong like a fossil car does, is cheap to run, it's going to mean people buy EVs. And also, he says, intelligent planning. And here, again, the warranty is the catalyst of change, he says. A comprehensive warranty at cell level, which many EVs come with 8-year, 10-year, 100,000-mile warranties. My car, for instance, the Renault Zoe, comes with breakdown cover, just with the car. I mean, if I run out of power because I was stupid enough not to put enough in, if I literally run out of electricity through my own fault, trying to get to the next charger and risking it, I'd call Renault and they'll come and pick me up. I mean, things like that. And also the warranty on the cells, as it moves into a second life, he says, will play a part in why people choose EVs. It's an interesting interview, and I'll pop a link in the show notes if you want to read more. And finally, as COVID-19 crunches global car sales, a backlog of orders have helped electric vehicles actually maintain momentum in many parts of the world. Better than petrol-powered cars and trucks, according to Bloomberg. In New York and other cities in northeastern US, NASA says that air pollution in northeast US has dropped by 30% in just the last couple of weeks. Politicians are creating aid packages to prop up economies, and they're focusing on supporting green technology. Not everywhere, but many are as well. And also, emissions rules changed in Europe, and so many car makers, although they would deny this, artificially held back cars until the 1st of January this year, and then, miraculously, and some of them will say, well, we opened up a new factory in Europe and so we've been able to make some more cars. Others just went, oh yeah, our waiting list went down. You can have a car now. Nobody wanted to sell you an EV last year, though plenty were being sold, but everybody wants you to buy one of their EVs this year because of new emissions rules. So I won't go into that now, but basically for every car EV they sell you, it's sort of equivalent to selling 2 or 3 petrol cars. There's now new quotas and limits they have to hit. It's kind of confusing, but it does mean that the effect of that is there was a backlog. And so because of that, they're still delivering and people are still buying EVs and the manufacturers want you to have an EV this year. That backlog combined with the fresh air that I'm sure you and I and anyone else listening to this podcast has noticed, actually. When a diesel drives past me now, you can really smell it. And I couldn't before because that was just the smell of the air. But now it's so quiet around where we live that if someone drives past in their diesel, it sort of hangs in the air and you can really notice it. I can't be the only person thinking that. Okay, let's go on to question of the week this week. How can the EV industry help people get into driving electric cars as soon as this is all over? Incentives, discounts, different ways of owning and buying and renting a car, maybe. Test drives, places like Try EV here in the UK to get you into the car. Test drives. What do you think? Email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Thank you to every patron of the podcast. Got 2 new names to read out to. I know, new patrons. I know. Everybody thought that this period would be a strange one, but I keep getting comments from people saying, thank you for your work. Thank you for making this show. It's a little ray of brightness and hope in a kind of media landscape that is thriving on negative news clicks at the moment. And so 2 new names to read out tomorrow. Thank you so much on Patreon. patreon.com/evnewsdaily is how this show is funded. 751 shows in the archive there, thanks to our previous premium partners: Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith for clean tech talent, Porsche of the Village Cincinnati, and Audi of Cincinnati East. Come and say hi on socials by searching EV News Daily. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and do remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.